Prehistoric Earth was a world ruled by extremes, a place where survival was never guaranteed and every living creature existed under constant threat. Long before cities, agriculture, or written memory, humans shared the planet with giants that feel almost mythical today. Among the most terrifying of these creatures was Titanoboa, the largest snake ever known to have lived. Stretching longer than a modern bus and weighing over a ton, this colossal predator dominated the dense, steaming rainforests of prehistoric South America. In this ancient world, an encounter between early humans and Titanoboa would not have been a heroic clash of equal forces, but a desperate struggle between fragile intelligence and overwhelming natural power. Titanoboa lived around 60 million years ago, during a time when Earth was warmer, wetter, and far more hostile to mammals than it is today. Dense tropical forests covered vast regions, rivers were wider and slower, and reptiles thrived in the heat. Titanoboa was perfectly adapted to this environment. Its massive body allowed it to overpower almost any animal it encountered, crushing prey with unstoppable force before swallowing it whole. It hunted silently, using patience and ambush rather than speed, waiting motionless in murky water or beneath thick vegetation until the moment to strike arrived. Humans, by contrast, arrived much later in Earth's history, but imagining their survival against a creature like Titanoboa offers insight into just how brutal prehistoric life could be. Early humans were not apex predators. They were small, relatively slow, and physically weak compared to the giants of their environment. Their greatest strengths were intelligence, cooperation, and adaptability. But against a creature that could kill with a single constriction, those advantages were severely tested. In a prehistoric jungle where Titanoboa ruled, early humans would have lived in constant fear. The forest floor was dark and humid, filled with unseen dangers. Every rustle of leaves could signal death. Rivers, essential for water and food, were also hunting grounds for massive predators. Humans depended on observation, memory, and group awareness to survive. One mistake, one misstep near the water's edge could end a life instantly. Titanoboa did not hunt like a typical predator. It did not chase or roar. It waited. Its enormous body blended seamlessly into the environment, camouflaged among roots, fallen trees, and muddy riverbanks. Early humans, lacking advanced weapons, would have been nearly defenseless against such a threat. A single adult human would stand no chance. Even a small group would struggle, as panic could scatter them before any coordinated response was possible. The deadliest aspect of Titanoboa was not its size alone, but its method of killing. Unlike venomous snakes, Titanoboa relied on sheer power. Once it struck, its coils wrapped around prey, tightening with every breath the victim took. Bones cracked, organs failed, and consciousness faded in seconds. Escape was nearly impossible. For early humans, whose bodies were fragile and whose bones lacked modern robustness, a single constriction would be fatal. Survival, therefore, depended on avoidance rather than confrontation. Early humans learned to read the landscape with extraordinary care. They watched animal behavior, noticing where prey avoided certain waters or paths. Birds suddenly taking flight, silence in the jungle, or unusual ripples in water could signal danger. These subtle cues became life-saving knowledge passed from generation to generation through gesture, sound, and shared experience. Despite their vulnerability, humans were not entirely helpless. Group living was their greatest defense. A lone human was easy prey, but a group created noise, movement, and unpredictability. Loud vocalizations, coordinated movement, and collective awareness could sometimes deter predators or at least reduce the chances of ambush. While Titanoboa was fearless against most animals, it still relied on surprise. A detected snake lost much of its advantage. Fire, if available, would have been a powerful deterrent, but early humans in deep prehistory may not have fully mastered it.
Even the presence of natural fire or burning branches could create temporary safe zones, as large reptiles were cautious of intense heat. Humans may have learned to associate open, burned areas with reduced danger, shaping their movement patterns across the landscape. If a confrontation did occur, it would have been chaotic and terrifying. Imagine a massive snake erupting from shallow water, its body thicker than a human torso, its jaws opening wide enough to engulf a person. Panic would spread instantly. Some would freeze, others would flee, and a few might attempt to distract the creature to save others. These moments, though rarely successful, shaped human psychology, reinforcing the importance of cooperation and sacrifice. Stone tools, if present, would offer limited advantage. Early tools were designed for cutting and scraping, not piercing thick reptilian skin. A Titanoboa's scales and muscle mass would absorb most blows. However, sharp stones could be used strategically, targeting sensitive areas such as the eyes or mouth. Such actions required extreme courage and coordination, and success was far from guaranteed. The psychological impact of living alongside such predators cannot be overstated. Fear became an organizing force in human behavior. Camps were placed carefully, often away from water sources despite the inconvenience. Sleeping patterns changed, with night watches and elevated resting places becoming essential. Children were taught from a young age to recognize danger signs, and stories of deadly encounters became warnings rather than legends. In time, these pressures shaped human evolution. Those who were more cautious, more socially aware, and better at learning from experience were more likely to survive and reproduce. Intelligence was not just an advantage, it was a necessity. The presence of apex predators like Titanoboa accelerated the development of human cognitive skills, reinforcing planning, memory, and communication. Titanoboa, however, was not an enemy that humans defeated. It was a force of nature that humans endured. Climate change eventually ended its reign. As global temperatures cooled, the environment no longer supported such massive cold-blooded reptiles. Titanoboa disappeared, not because humans' dominance, but because Earth itself changed. Yet the legacy of such predators lived on in human memory and instinct. Fear of snakes is deeply embedded in human psychology, even today. This fear may trace its roots back millions of years of coexistence with deadly reptiles. Our heightened awareness of movement, patterns, and hidden threats reflects an ancient survival mechanism forged in environments where death could strike without warning. The imagined battle between prehistoric humans and Titanoboa is not a story of victory through strength, it is a story of endurance through intelligence. Humans did not conquer the ancient world by overpowering its monsters, but by learning to live alongside them long enough for the world to change. Patience, adaptability, and cooperation allowed humans to survive eras that wiped out far larger and stronger creatures. In this sense, Titanoboa represents the ultimate test of early human survival. It embodied everything that made prehistoric Earth deadly: size, power, and indifference. Against such a creature, humans were insignificant physically, yet resilient mentally. Every successful avoidance, every safe night, and every lesson learned brought humanity one step closer to becoming the dominant species it would eventually become. The deadliest battles of ancient history were not always fought with weapons. Many were silent struggles against fear, hunger, and unseen danger. The conflict between humans and Titanoboa was one such battle, fought not in moments of glory, but in daily choices that determined whether a group lived or died. It was a battle of awareness versus ambush, memory versus instinct, and cooperation versus isolation. By surviving in a world ruled by creatures like Titanoboa, humans proved that dominance does not begin with power, but with persistence. The ancient rainforest was not conquered, but navigated. And in that navigation, humanity forged the traits that would later allow it to reshape the planet. The deadliest battle was not the moment of attack, but the constant challenge of living in a world where humans were never meant to be on top.